Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Catherine, and I work with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the 4 affordable condominiums being made available at Terrazza in Wellesley, Massachusetts. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the condos themselves. We're also going to cover the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and what to expect after the lottery is held. So if you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat that you'll see on your screen, or as you came into the room, you noticed that you were muted. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself. We just ask that you go ahead and mute yourself again after you've asked the question so we can minimize the outside noise. And this is a live session. It's being recorded, as you heard when you came into the room, and that is because it's going to be posted to SEB Housing's YouTube channel after tonight for anyone who wants to view it that wasn't able to attend. So if you have any questions after tonight's session, the best way, or the easiest way, I should say, to get in touch with us is by emailing info@sebhousing.com. If you'd prefer to call, there's a number on your screen as well, that 617 number that you could get in touch with us. But again, any questions, this is an open forum. I do have some slides up here, and I'll be going through a lot of information, but feel free to chime in with questions. I'll be asking at certain points during the session if anyone has questions as well. But again, anything you don't think of tonight, that's how you'd want to get in touch with us, either by emailing or giving us a call. So just some quick information on who SEB Housing is. So we are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable condos, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine eligibility, and then to eventually run the lottery. We're not part of the sales team for the developer. We haven't seen the condos in person, so just want to make that clear. But in the initial phases of the process, we would be your main point of contact rather than the developer. Further along in the process, you would have more direct contact with the sales team if you're invited to move forward to purchase one of the homes. So there's really 2 broad steps in the process. The first is applying for the affordable housing program itself. You'd be in touch with SEB Housing during that time, and we can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program. We're going to review your application and your supporting documentation. If you're eligible, you'll be entered into the lottery, and you'll be given a position on the waiting list after the lottery is run. The second step in the process involves the actually reserving and buying a home. Your opportunity to do that is going to depend on your waiting list placement after the lottery. And at that point, that's when you'd be in touch with the sales team a lot more often than you would be in touch with SEB at that point. The information packet is available on our website. That is a package with most of the information that I'm going to be covering tonight is in that information packet. There is a timeline for a lot of these steps that I'm going to be going through that's listed on page 11 of that information packet. If you haven't already looked at SEB Housing's website and the specific page for Terrazza, we invite you to do that. Our website is sebhousing.com, but if you click on I want to buy, since this is a home ownership opportunity, and you select Terrazza, you'll be taken to a page specific to this property. And that's where you're going to find a downloadable version of the application, the information packet that I'm mentioning, and a deed rider, which I'll be covering a little bit later. On the website listing, there's also the QR code, that jot form link that is on your screen right now if you have it up. That is an online application. We expect a lot of interest in these homes. So we have an online application, which would be the easiest way for most people to apply. If you prefer a paper application, you may do that as well. But the link that's on your screen now is also on our website listing. So you'll be able to apply online. You do not need to submit any supporting income information right now. So it's really just the application that you're self-reporting your income an asset, that sort of thing. Like I said, if for any reason the online application is not an option for you, you can download the lottery application or request a paper application. If you decide to fill out that paper application, you can submit it to us in one of several ways. You can email it to us at info@svbhousing.com. You could send it to us in regular mail, or you could drop it off if you're in the Needham area. That's where our office is located. And we're at 257 Hillside Ave. You can, there's a blue drop box on the left side of the building. You'd be able to drop it in there if you would like to do so. Again, we do encourage you to fill out the application online, but you can pick whatever option is most convenient for you. It is a fairly brief application, should take you about 10 minutes to complete, because there is no supporting income, asset, or tax documentation needed at this early stage in the process. But all of that information will be required from you after the lottery. In addition, a mortgage pre-approval is not required to be submitted with your online application or your paper lottery application. However, that is a requirement of every applicant after the lottery, or the applicants that are closest to the top of the waiting list, I should say. So you will be required to submit proof of that mortgage pre-approval if you are invited forward after the lottery. So because of that, we do suggest that everyone who's interested in this opportunity and who's submitting a lottery application obtains that mortgage pre-approval as soon as possible. It might take a week or two to get, so we just like to put that out there. If you're interested in the opportunity, the lottery applications are due by August 28th. The online application link will shut down at 2 p.m. on that date. So the hard deadline is 2 p.m. on August 28th. So a little bit under a month from now for you to get your application in if you are interested. And you don't need to be a resident of Wellesley to apply for this lottery. However, households who qualify for local preference, which I'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes as well, are going to have priority on the waiting lists for 2 of these townhomes, or condos, I should say. This should not deter anyone from applying. If you don't qualify for local preference, you don't live or work in Wellesley, that's completely fine. There are 2 homes that will have preference for local households, local priority households. Those are sort of the logistics right to start off the bat. I'm going to talk a little bit more now about the condos themselves. Does anyone have any questions before I move on?
I do.
Sure.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good, thank you. My name is Anna. I have a question about how, so as far as right now, like we just have to submit application, right?
Yep, just the lottery application. At a later date, if you're one of the households with, a high position on the waiting list after the lottery, you'd be asked to submit your income, asset, tax documentation, and a mortgage pre-approval. But at this stage, you just need to either complete that online lottery application where you are self-reporting your income and all of your household members, for example, and then submit it, and we'll let you know if you're eligible for the lottery, and if anything is incomplete or if we have questions on it, we'll let you know.
So, thank you so much for that. And because mortgage application takes a while to get approved, like should we do that now just to be ready when you guys ask for that pre-approval?
Yeah, so we suggest that everyone does that now if they're interested in the opportunity, because it could take a week or 2 to get, but yeah, it's not a requirement right now, but the lottery is not until the beginning of September, so you've got a few weeks to do that. Even if you were invited forward to submit that mortgage pre-approval, you have about 6 weeks until we'd be asking for it. I guess 5 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
One more question, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep.
Is there a particular bank that we should be going through? Are these pre-approvals because they're for affordable housing? Are they treated differently? Are
Yeah,
there
it's a
only
great
certain-
question. That's a great question. So I'll touch on that, but just real quick, to answer your question, no, you can go to any bank you would like. We do have some suggestions of banks that you maybe will want to stay away from, or one bank that you want to stay away from because they don't seem to have mortgages that are applicable for affordable housing. And then we have a link in our information packet, which kind of guides anyone who's looking for suggestions to the Mass Housing Partnership website. And they have a lot of lenders who are knowledgeable about affordable housing, which is what you'll want to look for. But the short answer is no, you can go with whoever you would like.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so there's a couple questions coming through the chat here. It's a direct message. How many are on the waiting list? If only the top would have the opportunity to buy. Has it happened recently where the top household does not buy? Yeah, so great question. Like I said, we expect a lot of interest in these homes. We have about 100 lottery applications so far. That doesn't mean that actually, I can tell you that there's no way that every all the 100 people who have applied are going to be eligible for the home. It just doesn't happen that way. So, everyone is encouraged to apply. The top households are going to be random because it's going to be a lottery. There's 2 homes that the waiting list is going to have local preference. If you're a larger household, we'll get through all of the priorities and how the waiting lists are going to be formulated. But yeah, there's only 4 condos. There's going to be 4 buyers eventually. It more likely than not is not going to be the top 4 households on these waiting lists because from our experience, what we see is, people decide not to follow through that might have favorable positions on the waiting list, or there's households who don't qualify. They either had reported income, incorrectly on their application, or there was just various reasons why households might not be eligible after the fact. So yes, it does happen where the top households aren't necessarily those who buy. If the lender is not a bank but a mortgage company, is that okay? If you can get a pre-approval from the place that you're going, you should be good. I haven't had that question before. So yes, I think, as long as you're getting a mortgage pre-approval letter, that is what would be necessary in terms of the next step when it comes to that after the lottery. All right, so to talk about the affordable homes a little more. So these are 2-bedroom condos located at 12 through 18 Hollis Street in Wellesley. They're part of a larger development called Terrazza. The main building of the development is located at 100 Linden Street, which is right next to the Hollis Street address. That larger main building was newly constructed, and it's going to feature 35 market rate condos. The 4 affordable condos that this lottery covers are located right next door, about 50 feet from the main 3-story building is where these condos are, across a little bit of parking. There were existing buildings on Hollis Street which underwent a complete renovation to create the affordable condos. The details about that work that was completed during the renovation can be found on the last page of the information packet, but you'll see that it includes, for both of the buildings, new roofs, siding, doors, windows, bathrooms, kitchens, plumbing, lighting, floors, landscaping. Everything has basically been redone, but these were existing structures. It is not a new build like that main building that has all the amenities that I'll talk about. So the homes at 12 and 14 Hollis Street are part of the same building. And then there's another building, 16 and 18 Hollis Street, that are joined as well. So 2 condos in each of those structures. The square footage, bathroom count, and exact features of each of those units varies. So I tried to break it down a little bit on your screen right now. You'll see that 12 and 14 Hollis Street are more similar to one another, and then also 16 and 18 are similar to one another in terms of the bathroom counts, and 2 of them have gas cooking versus electric cooking, that sort of thing. All 4 condos include appliances, so a fridge, stove, microwave, dishwasher with a garbage disposal, washer dryer. All homeowners are going to have access to the community amenities that are found within that larger main building at Terrazza. The amenities in that building include a private courtyard, fitness center, grills, pet spa, as well as conference and bike rooms. So you'll have a key fob to get into those amenities. I asked the developer as well, like, could affordable residents bring guests over there? The answer is yes. The condos themselves, this whole development is located near Wellesley Square, which means that they're just a few blocks to restaurants, shops, and also the commuter rail station at Wellesley Square. The affordable condos all have the same sales price, which is $272,800, and there is a $100 a month HOA fee or condo fee. So, as I'm sure you know, if you're searching for a home in the area, those prices are significantly below, or that price is significantly below what market rate condos are selling for in the area, or at Terrazza, which has homes going for between 1 and 2 million. So since these homes are going to be sold at an affordable price, the lottery is only being made available to households with annual incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. AMI is what it's called. So AMI are the amounts that the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, federal agency, releases each spring. Wellesley falls within the Metro Boston area, and that is how this affordable price is set using that as a calculation. Since these are affordable condos, you're going to want to keep in mind that they have what's called a deed rider filed along with the deed at the time of the purchase. A sample deed rider is attached to our website listing along with the information packet and paper application. The deed rider ensures that the home remains affordable. All these homes are going to remain affordable in the future, even if those first home buyers eventually choose to sell the home. So just a quick overview of some of what the deed rider says. The deed rider limits the amount for which you can eventually resell the property. So this opportunity isn't for you if you're looking to buy a home, flip it and resell it in a year or two to make a large profit. It doesn't mean you won't be able to sell the home for more than what you paid for it. It just means that it's going to need to be resold eventually to another affordable buyer. So you might have some return on investment, but you shouldn't expect a large appreciation that you might see in the market for market rate homes. There is a formula for resale, and there's an example of that towards the end of the information packet. It's also based on AMI if you're interested in that. The deed rider also says that this condo must be your primary residence. So generally, it can't be rented out as an investment property like a Airbnb or anything like that. And then also the deed rider says that if you'd like to make improvements to the property or refinance, you would need to, capital improvements might be like a new roof or something like that. You would need to first contact the state agency that oversees the affordable housing program, which is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. It used to be DHCD. They just changed their name. So that's the new acronym for that state agency that oversees this program. And they would need to approve any of those renovations. As I said, these homes have been fully renovated top to bottom, so it's unlikely that this would be coming up anytime soon, but just want to mention that. So I mentioned too that a mortgage pre-approval is going to be required to be submitted after the lottery if you're one of those top households on the waiting list. We suggest you review the information packet. If you're interested, you either copy or rip out page 8 of the information packet that lists the required mortgage pre-approval standards for this housing opportunity. You can bring it right to your lender or bank to show it to them. And the reason we suggest that is because you want to be sure that the mortgage product that you're being offered is going to meet the necessary standards for the affordable housing program. We also suggest that you bring the sample deed rider, which is in the website listing, since the information in that deed rider could be problematic for some lenders. There are certain loans that do not accept all of the terms of a deed rider. So for example, the loan must have a fixed interest rate throughout the term of the mortgage. It also can't be an FHA or VA loan, since those types of loans don't accept the deed restriction either. You don't want to be in a situation where you have your mortgage pre-approval, but then backs out at the time of purchase once they recognize that this is an affordable opportunity. And then I mentioned this too, along those lines, in our experience, it's been very difficult for applicants to successfully close on an affordable home with Bank of America as their lender. So we recommend that you don't use Bank of America for this, for your mortgage pre-approval or eventually your mortgage. It just seems like your mortgage products aren't suited for affordable units. But with all that said, we do encourage you to select any lender or bank that you would like. We just strongly recommend that you choose someone that has experience with affordable housing programs, so there isn't any surprises towards the end of the process. And like I said, there's a link to Mass Housing Partnership. That's page 10 of the information packet. Their website is a good resource for you to find lenders who are familiar with affordable housing. The mortgage pre-approval standards state that you must provide a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price, which is and half of that 3%, which is 1.5%, must come from your own funds. So your loan or mortgage can be for up to 97% of the purchase price.
So I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Just the last part there about those down payments?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah, so the mortgage pre-approval for this opportunity states that you must have a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So your mortgage can be up to 97%.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. I'm just going to pause there for one moment because there's a few questions here. Okay, so how many parking spaces for each unit? I'm going to get to that. Oh, well, actually, maybe I should have got to that, but I think I didn't switch the page here. So there's one dedicated surface spot for each of the affordable units. There is visitor parking, but that's for the whole development, so including that larger building with the market rate units. There's at least a few visitor spots, but just one included dedicated parking spot for each of the buyers. Does the condo fee increase? It could over time. We wouldn't know when that might happen, or I'm not overly familiar with how that might work. I know that there's going to be a condo association established, and everybody would be well aware of the fact that it was increasing and why, but it will not increase until after you own the home. There are not going to be any changes to the numbers you're seeing between now and closing. Are the condos ready? So good question. When I spoke to the developer at the end of June, they were nearing completion. They were not completed at that point. That included both the market and the affordable homes. They're all expected to come online at the same time. They might be just finishing up now, but I don't know as of today if they are 100% completed. I know that they were closed. We have some pictures up on our website, and so yeah, I mean, they if they're not, they will be very soon. All right, so the eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program. That's what I'm going to move on to now. So there are 4 main eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program. They're listed on page 4 of the information packet. There's 5 eligibility requirements. So the first is that everyone in the household must qualify as a first-time home buyer. There are exceptions to that. I'm going to go over those in just a minute. But even if you or someone in your household qualifies for one of those exceptions, you would need to sell your current home prior to purchasing an affordable condo at Terrazza. The second eligibility requirement is that a household's income and assets must be below the maximum allowable income and asset limits, which are on your screen now. If you have that up, we'll talk a lot more about how we calculate income in a few minutes as well. The third eligibility requirement is that eventually households must be pre-approved for a mortgage. Another eligibility requirement is that anyone in the household who owns a home, it does need to be sold prior to closing on that affordable condo. And then the fifth is, this doesn't come up very often, but households cannot have financial interest or be a related party to the developer. So if you work for the sales team or if you are related to the developer in some way, you might not be eligible for this lottery. To circle back on that first eligibility criteria to explain more about the first-time homebuyer definition. So a first-time homebuyer is someone, and this is everybody in the household needs to be considered a first-time homebuyer. This is someone who has not within the last 3 years owned a home. This includes through joint ownership. So if a household member was on the deed to a home along with a partner or a spouse, that you were still considered an owner of that home. There are 5 exceptions to the first-time homebuyer rule. These are listed in the information packet. Just the 3 that come up most often is what I'm going to touch on right now. So the first of those exceptions is someone who's referred to as a displaced homemaker. So that's someone who hasn't worked outside the home for many years. They've owned a home recently with their partner or spouse, but they no longer own that home. So they're off the deed due to a recent legal separation or divorce. The second exception to that first-time homebuyer rule is a single parent with at least joint custody of 1 or more children, or someone who's pregnant, who's now being displaced and needs to look for a new home due to a breakup or divorce. The third exception is an age-qualified household. So this applies to households with a member who is 55 or older and a person who is selling or has sold a home recently in order to purchase an affordable property. So for example, if you're 60 years old and you recently sold a home, within that last 3-year period, so you could buy an affordable home, you may still be eligible for this lottery. So like I said, if you qualify for one of those exceptions, you do still need to sell your home and be off the deed prior to closing on a home at Terrazza. So that might mean that a divorce needs to be finalized, etc., so that your so that your name is no longer on the deed to that home. A couple questions here. Will there be a viewing of the homes before the lottery? The homes are only going to be shown, there's going to be tours available for households who are at the top of each waiting list. So there are not going to be tours of the home prior to the lottery. Do they have central cooling and heating? Great question. I would be shocked if they don't, but I will confirm that for you. I can't imagine that they did a full renovation and didn't do that. They didn't specifically mention it. I'm going to say you're probably safe to assume, but if you could email me or email info@scbhousing.com, I'll make sure to confirm that with the developer and email you back. And then there's one more here, or a couple more. Can we use charging station at main facility? I'm assuming you're talking about for electric vehicle. And yes, if any amenity at the main building you're able to use. I didn't mention that in the list of amenities, but yes, you'd be able to use that just like you'd be able to use the fitness center, for example. Is there a starting limit on your yearly income? No, so there's no minimum income. And I think I'm about to mention that as well, but there's no minimum income, but you do want to keep in mind that you need to still qualify for a mortgage pre-approval. So there are going to be income requirements at a lender. So a bank is going to need to see, collect pay stubs from you and see if you can be approved for that mortgage product. But no, there's no low end threshold for your income. All right, so to talk more about the income limits. Second, eligibility criteria. Since these are affordable homes, like I said, it's being made available to purchase at a price that's lower than the other homes within the development. And so because of this, the homes are being made available only to households who have a total annual income at or below 80% of the area median income for Wellesley. The maximum income limits that are on your screen, that are in the information packet on the ad that you've seen, those are set by household size. So they include everyone who will be living in the unit. As you can see on your screen, so if you don't have it up, as an example, if you're a two-person household, the maximum income limit for this opportunity is $94,800, and that, changes depending on how many household members you have. As I said, you're not required to submit verification of income when you submit your lottery application. Applicants are going to be provided, and if you have already applied and you've been found eligible for the lottery, you were sent a link to the documentation requirements guide. That guide it details exactly what types of documentation, such as how many pay stubs, how many tax returns you're going to need, we're going to request from you, depending on your sources of income and assets. So you should review that carefully. If you're invited to move forward in the process, you're going to have about 7 to 10 days to get that information in to confirm your program eligibility. No matter what your income situation is, every applicant, if you're asked to move forward after the lottery, is going to need to submit the last 3 years of your tax return. And, if you're working 5 weeks, I believe, of pay stubs and that sort of thing. Although we don't need the verification now, I do want to give you a basic overview of how your income will be calculated when we're looking at whether or not your household is eligible for the affordable housing program. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So all income from household members is included. This includes bonuses and overtime, those types of incomes that may be sporadic. The only exceptions to this are minors. So anybody under the age of 18 in your household who is working, we're not going to count their wage income. And then for dependent full-time students who are working, we're only going to count $480 of their wages when counting when determining your eligibility. We are required to count gross income, so not net income, but the amount that you make before taxes. So we recognize, obviously, none of us make or take home the full amount of our salary, but it is gross income that is required to be counted when we are looking at eligibility. How we calculate your income is not one size fits all either. So everyone's income circumstances are unique. Some applicants have a weekly salary that's steady and consistent throughout the year. Others, of course, are self-employed or work seasonally. So in those circumstances, if your income is more sporadic, we might need to look further into the past in order to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. And then specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you'll need to complete what's called a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. Your business expenses are taken into consideration, but for households who are not self-employed, it is always the gross income that we count. So if you don't have a business, you're working somewhere and you have a salary and you are submitting, medical or car payments, we're not going to be able to count those as an expense, unfortunately, or deduct it from your income, I should say. So in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to assume that you're going to continue to make it going forward, even if that income, the pay stubs that we're looking at, for example, include overtime and bonuses, which we understand aren't always guaranteed. That, of course, is unless we have some sort of definitive documentation from you that you're not going to be earning an income source going forward. So if you stopped working somewhere and we have a letter from that employer, for example, saying your end date. When you're filling out the application, whether it be the online application or the paper application, you're going to want to make sure you list everything on that, every income source that's coming into your household. So not just wages, but if anyone in your household is receiving Social Security, child support, unemployment, a pension payout, that sort of thing. Any assets that are generating income, you're going to want to list under your income as well. You just don't want to have any surprises after you've been accepted into the lottery, and then after the fact you may be over income if you're not disclosing everything up front. And I already mentioned this too, but there's no minimum household income requirements, but you will need to qualify for that mortgage pre-approval. So you'll need to meet the lender's requirements in order to do that. Assets. So there is an asset limit for this homeownership opportunity. Households may not have more than $75,000 in assets at the time of your application. So this includes funds that you might be saving for a future down payment. And when we talk about assets, we're not just talking about checking and savings accounts, but the net value of your retirement accounts if you have a 401k or 403b, net value of stocks, bonds, even your Venmo, PayPal account, if you have money that's kind of stuck in there, we're going to be asking for that as well. You might think it's a little strange that we're going to need to count funds that you have tied up in a retirement account, especially since many of you might not be planning to access that money for decades. But the program requires us to do that, since you could, in theory, access the account to withdraw funds, even though you would have that large penalty for drawing from the account. It's the post-penalty amount, though, or the net cash value that we would need to count. So if you have a retirement account, you'd be asked to get a letter from that financial institution that has your plan, and they would be able to list that post-penalty amount for you and would count that towards your $75,000 asset limit. Kind of along the same lines as assets, if you happen to have a family member who is planning to gift you part of your down payment, that would also need to be disclosed as an asset on your application. And then, like I said, if income is being generated by some of these assets, that's going to be counted towards your income. We do not need documents about personal assets, such as cars, jewelry, that sort of thing. We don't need information on those, and they would not count towards your $75,000 limit. Any questions on eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program before I move on to the lottery itself?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, if somebody hasn't worked in the previous 2 years and start a new job last year and still in that job, would that affect on the application process?
So we would just be asking you for, the last 3 years of tax returns are only going to show this job on the last year worth. But we'll take that into consideration. We'll ask for pay stubs if it's a employer and not a self-employment situation. So yeah, all of that will be taken into consideration. We'll do the best we can to project what the household income is going forward, given what we're given, or given what we received from the applicant.
Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, so as I mentioned, anyone who is interested in this opportunity, you're encouraged to apply as early as possible just to get the process started. You have almost a month left to do that. Once we receive your application, whether it be an online application or a paper application, we're going to contact you if there's any information that's missing. Or if you're filling out the online form, it's going to immediately throw back some red font to you, letting you know what fields you didn't fill out correctly. When you do fill out the online application, you will get once you've submitted it and finished it, you will get a confirmation email. And so just keep that in mind and be looking for that email if you are not sure if the application went through. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent a lottery application number in an email that comes from actually a no reply email from SCB Housing. And if you're found eligible, the application number in that email is going to be in the form of TER dot series of numbers, and TER is just obviously differentiating this lottery for Terrazza. And so if you're the first person to submit an application and be found eligible for this lottery, your number is going to be TER.001. And this is just meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name isn't called during the lottery. That is the number that's going to be called during the lottery itself. It's not a ranking of any sort. Like I said, it just corresponds with the order in which your application was approved for the lottery. That email will also confirm whether your household reported qualifying for local preference. So you will have self-reported on your application whether or not you believe that your household qualifies for that preference. Verification that your household qualifies for local preference is going to be required if you're one of the top households on the waiting list following the lottery. So you want to make sure that you're filling that out correctly, so you're not being given a position on the local list if you won't be able to verify that priority after the fact. And what we might be asking for would be, you know, if you live in Wellesley, would be looking for a lease or a utility bill. If you work in the town of Wellesley, a pay stub with your employer's address, that sort of thing. And like I said, there's 2 of the 4 condos have that local priority. More information about local preference and the waiting lists and how they will be, how the priority will be assigned on the waiting list is in the information packet as well. So on your application, you will have also indicated your household type as either type 1 or type 2. Basically, that roughly corresponds with the size of your household. So all household types can apply for these 2-bedroom homes, but type 2 households are going to have priority, top priority on both waiting lists. So this means that all type 1 households will be behind all type 2 households on the waiting list. Page 9 of the information packet has the rundown of what type household you might be. When you fill out the online application, it's going to be giving you examples of the different types of households as well, but just for your reference. All households with 3, 4, or 5 members are considered type 2 households, as well as some 2-person households. So for example, a head of household with a dependent, that's a type 2 household, or 1 person who requires an additional bedroom due to a medical need. But if you are a 1-person household with no medical need for that 2nd bedroom, you will be considered type 1 household. All right, so again, the lottery application deadline is August 28th at 2 p.m. That online server that if you are planning to complete your application online, that is going to shut off at 2 p.m. on the 28th of August. The lottery itself is going to be held virtually on September 7th at 6 p.m. Same format as this information session, meaning it's a Zoom call. Numbers will be probably in this case, since there's going to be a lot of applicants, they will be digitally randomized, and my screen will be shared and you'll be able to see it happening in real time, and we'll be recording that session. After the lottery is held, we're going to sort the results by priority and create the waiting list, and the top households will be invited by SCB Housing to move forward in the process to reserve, get a mortgage, and eventually buy the property. During that lottery session, every lottery number is going to be drawn. Sometimes when you think of lotteries, you know, you think there's 4 condos, there's just going to be 4 numbers that are called, and if I'm not one of those numbers, I'm not going to have a chance to buy the property. That's not the case here at all. Everyone will have a position on the waiting list, and the lottery in this case is really just held in order for us to be able to establish the waiting list. It creates an order of priority for us and is really just one step in this process. So if you're watching the night of the lottery, it sometimes is hard to tell where your placement actually is going to be on the waiting list, because you won't know that night. You'll have to wait until, well, you might know that night, but it'll be after the lottery call, because I will be emailing the waiting lists after they're established. After we sort those results, you'll see where you fall on the waiting list. You'll find your lottery number, and you'll be able to confirm if you might be called forward right away. So during that lottery call, you do not need to be present, because you will be sent the results probably that night, if not the following morning. So to give you an example of how you really are not able to know exactly where you're going to be on that waiting list during the lottery. So if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're still going to be behind all of the type 2 households on the waiting list. Also, there might be households who were entered into the lottery that are later found ineligible by either SCB housing, or they ultimately decide not to purchase a home. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, say you're drawn, 5th or something, you shouldn't lose, or say that you're 5th on a waiting list, you shouldn't lose hope at being able to purchase or move forward for one of these homes. You might still have the opportunity to do so. It just depends on how many households ahead of you drop off that waiting list. So like I said, when you receive that email with the waiting list, you're going to find your lottery application number, and you can see where you fall on that list, and then you'll have a better idea. If you are one of the top households on the waiting list, SCB Housing is going to send you an invite to move forward in the process. And that is when you'll be asked to provide all of the income, asset, and tax documentation, as well as your mortgage pre-approval. And that will help us confirm your eligibility for this opportunity. So hopefully by that point in the process, you've been able to gather the information that was spelled out in that documentation requirements guide that you'll receive a link to when you get your lottery application number. Like I said, you'll have about 7 to 10 days to get that requested information into us. Once we receive your application package with all of the income and tax documentation, we're going to review it and respond to you within a few days. Most applicants don't submit a 100% complete application or packet to us on the first try. There's a couple reasons for that. We're going to work with you to complete it, so don't be discouraged. So the first reason, that you might have an incomplete application is just there's a lot of information that's going to be required from you. And then the second is just because sometimes we have further questions after we review your documentation. So maybe you've submitted pay stubs and there's some lines in there that we don't understand, or we need more information on some bank deposits, that sort of thing. So that's why we encourage you to try to prepare as much of this documentation as you can before we are asking for it, if you can. That's why we sent the documentation requirements guide, to get you, ready for the next steps in the process. All right, so a couple questions have come in. Non-citizenship is eligible, yes. If you are not a citizen, you may apply for the lottery. In terms of like the different, stages of citizenship, green card versus not having that, I can't say for sure how that's going to go at any lender or certain banks and things like that. But in terms of our ability to be able to program qualify you, it is not usually something that gets in the way, unless of course you're not able to verify income in any sort of way. So we encourage you to apply still. Are local preference applicants given first choice on the units, or are the units selected randomly since they're all different? So great question. I had a question on this today from my colleague as well, because I wasn't quite sure. So technically, yes, the local preference households are going to have first choice at the 4 units. And that's because the sales team is going to have those, we're going to be looking at the waiting list for the local preference units first. Sorry, the local preference waiting lists are going to be used first in terms of when we are inviting households forward. And I understand that, square footage, amenities, not really amenities, but features of the units, outdoor space, that sort of thing does vary quite a bit between the four of them. How can I get an information packet? Sure. So if you go on our website and go to I want to buy and then select Terrazza, that's going to be this opportunity. And there is a PDF for the a copy of a sample deed rider, as well as the information packet and a paper application. So you'll see that there. Or if you want to email info@sdbhousing.com, if that's easier for you, we can send you one. We'll send you the PDF as an attachment to a reply email. Question here. So I'm number 5 on the waiting list. How do we know if the condo is bought? How long will I be on the waiting list? Sure. So in terms of a timeline, there's not really any way to confirm how long it will take in order for, potentially households in front of you to move off the waiting list or drop off the waiting list if they have changed their mind or aren't eligible. But we'll keep in touch with you if you have questions on, if anyone has dropped off in front of you, we're happy to let you know that. It just depends on how long households are taking to get their information into us. Unfortunately, things can, for individual buyers, things could go south at any point in terms of, maybe they submitted everything and are eligible for the affordable housing program, but then the mortgage commitment letter is something that they're not able to get. So that could be several weeks with one buyer before they drop off the list. So you'll be on the list as position 5. That will not change unless someone ahead of you drops off. And like I said, if you ever want to email us at info@sdbhousing.com, say it's been 2 months and you're just curious where we're at, if the units have already been bought, we can certainly tell you that. Does the residence allow pets? Yes. And I do have specific information on that I can pull up real quick, if you bear with me, because I know that is a question that comes up quite a bit. And if I don't have it readily available, if you could email info@sdbhousing.com. I did have information on it from the developer. So if I don't have this within the next couple of seconds, just please email us so I can get you the specifics on their pet policy. One moment here. Okay, so much of what was said is that if you have a pet, it's going to be worked out with the, the management office there. But there are breed restrictions for dogs. Sorry, they gave me like a whole synopsis here, and I can send this to you. If you want to email info@sdbhousing.com, I can send you the language that is going to be in their agreement, because it's a little specific in terms of types of animals. So you can email me. And again, it's info@sdbhousing.com. If we're 5 members, husband, wife, and 3 kids, do we have more chances than 4-person households? No. All 2-person households are going to have the same priority, regardless of whether or not there are, 2 people, 5 people, 4 people, but you will be a type 2 household for sure. Oh, not quite done yet. All right. So if you're ultimately found eligible by SEB Housing, our next step in the process is to send your file to the state agency that oversees this affordable housing program. Again, that's the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They're going to do a file review to give us the green light that you're eligible to move forward in the process. Once EOHLC has approved your application, this process becomes a lot more similar to the process of buying a market rate home, for example. At that point, if you've been found eligible, I should mention, if you decide to hire an attorney to assist you in navigating the process, that's something that we encourage. It's perfectly acceptable and likely the smart thing to do. If you are, making this huge decision, you want to be sure you understand the process and are well represented. So I would wait to do that until you have been approved by SEB and then the state. So again, once EOHLC, the state, has approved your application, your file, we're going to put you in touch with the owner, the developer, to schedule a time to tour the condo if you haven't already at that point. At that point, you're going to complete a reservation agreement. That's something that is drawn up by the sales team, and that will be at the point that you reserve the home. At that point, you'll be putting down a $500 refundable deposit. It's required at that point. After you reserve the home that you choose, you'll have about 10 business days to sign a purchase and sale agreement and place the required deposit of 1.5% of the sales price minus that $500 that you already paid when you reserved the unit. Your P&S agreement is going to include certain agreed upon contingencies and a closing date, and it's one of the final steps in the home buying process. So at this point, you're well along in the process. Like I said, at the time of P&S, you are putting down 1.5%, and then at closing, that's when you'd be putting down the other 1.5% to make that total of 3%. Once the purchase and sale is signed, you're going to need to go back to your lender who issued the mortgage pre-approval and obtain a mortgage commitment. The bank's process is going to vary a little bit depending on the lender, but generally they're going to want to review all of your documentation up until this point. So the P&S agreement, the deed rider, they're going to do an appraisal of the condo, all of that. Then there is a final review by SEB Housing, and that is because households must remain eligible for the affordable housing program up until the time of closing. So about 3 to 4 weeks prior to your closing date, you're going to hear from us because we need to conduct that final review. So we might be asking for updated pay stubs, bank statements. We're definitely going to be asking for the mortgage commitment letter that you received. And then we'll, again, forward that final package over to the state, and they're going to do their final review, which should be fairly quick. And if your eligibility is maintained throughout that process, then you will move toward closing. Once you've closed on the home, you can move in. There's no future income or asset eligibility reviews. You do not, you might be eligible for the program when you move in, then you lose your job or get a new job or get a second job and you're over the income limit 3 months after you close, that's fine. There are no ongoing requirements for your income to be below a certain limit. So that's it. I mean, most of what I wanted to cover, or everything that I wanted to cover from the information packet, I have got through. I know there's a question here. Will there be subsidized property taxes based on the purchase price of the home? Yes. So that's usually something that I mention. I did not do the calculation for Wellesley in terms of their residential sales tax, but you can find that online. And the property taxes will be based on the affordable home price, not the market price. You certainly don't want to be paying taxes on a $1 million home if you don't pay $1 million for a home. So yes, that will be a much lower tax rate because it will be based off of the affordable price. How much can we expect for closing costs? So we don't like to, or we can't really estimate how much it will be because it's going to depend on the lender. But I don't even want to give you a general estimate other than just what you could Google on that, because it's not something that is completely uniform across the board. If I'm the top applicant, I'm one of the top applicants and don't purchase the home, can we apply for another lottery? Yep, you can be applying for multiple home ownership lotteries through FCB or through another agency, another lottery agent. If you are looking at anything else, yep, there's no reason to, you know, only apply to one. You can apply to as many as you'd like. You just want to, obviously, you know, if you're called forward for this one, you want to make sure that you're meeting the deadlines that are given if you have been asked to submit documentation. So we encourage you to apply. Like I said, the lottery application deadline is August 28th at 2 p.m. That online application is going to shut down at 2 p.m. that day. You can get your lottery application to us either online or as a paper application. A couple more questions here.
Question.
Yep.
So if you get chosen by the lottery, right?
Mhm.
Do you have an option to choose which unit you want to get, or you guys will choose which unit you're getting?
Yep. So you'll have the opportunity to, you know, depending on when you're asked to move forward in the process, you'll be able to select from the homes that are remaining. So if someone had already been invited forward ahead of you and they chose a unit, you'll be told which 3 units out of the 4 are still left, and all that. Yep. There's a couple other questions here. If we have individual questions, can we make an appointment to talk to someone? Yep. In order to do that, I recommend emailing info@fcbhousing.com, or I'm going to switch here. You could call us at the 617 number as well. So our admin team that kind of fields all the questions that are coming into the agency as a whole will be able to direct you to the person who is most likely to be able to respond to your individual questions. You know, for example, someone who, if you want to talk through your specific, you know, income qualifications and what we might ask for certain verifications of income, our processors will be able to help you with that. Can you ask how the future condo fee will be controlled or calculated? I'm not sure if the association will know that yet. You certainly would be able to see what the condo fees cover. So, you know, when you're meeting with the sales team, they'll have a printout for you in terms of, you know, showing you what is included in those fees and which maybe line items are likely to increase in expenses going forward and that sort of thing. Will you be able to purchase another home in the future? So I'm not sure what you mean by that, other than, you know, if you were to buy this property as an affordable home buyer and you sold it, and then you could, I mean, if you own a affordable home, could you buy a second home? I don't see what, well, so in the deed rider, it is going to stipulate that it needs to be the affordable home, the home that you bought at an affordable price needs to be your primary residence. So if you're buying a second home and that second home is now going to be your primary residence, that would not be allowable. In terms of buying a second home as a vacation home, it probably is something that you would need to reach out to the state agency about if that were to come into play. But I think those are the two considerations that you're kind of asking about there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Again, anyone who had a question that I asked you to email info@fcbhousing.com, I apologize that I don't have the information up front, but we'll get back to you by tomorrow on your questions. Or if anything comes to mind after tonight, certainly reach out to us. And thank you so much for attending. I appreciate all the questions and the interest. So any questions on the lottery application as well, just let us know. And we look forward to getting your application by the 28th of August.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.